All right, guys, welcome back to Hunter's Garage Gym. Today I want to talk to you about some of the principles that go into the training. And one of these principles is the Afferent versus Efferent systems of the body. These are two systems that you need to work together in order to progress, but you also must understand that these are two completely separate systems. So the Afferent system is your body talking to your brain. So this is going to be where you have your sensory neurons and you're touching things, you're feeling things, you're smelling things, you're sensing different stimuli, and you're also feeling intensity, pain, things of that nature. So it's the world communicating through your body to your brain. That's the Afferent side. The Efferent side is your brain's connection to your body. So this is motor neurons moving to initiate action and to move. Okay, so this is where you actually take action upon what the stimulus is. So if you have a stimulus, let's say you're doing something like a deadlift and it's very heavy, you look at the bar, maybe it's like 400 pounds, you get psyched up, you grab the bar, you start to feel the knurling, you start to feel that intensity, and you're all in the Afferent system at that point. So your body's talking to your brain, trying to talk to you about how heavy this is gonna feel, what the bar feels like in your hands, and you're gonna have to move through that, and you're gonna have to move into this Efferent system of your brain talking to your body and saying like, come on, let's actually lift this weight, and then move on to the action of lifting the weight. So right here is a little diagram. I'm not a very good artist, but what I have is, this is the spinal cord, and this is the skin and the muscle tissue, and this goes up through the different, what are these called, nerves? Up the different nerves into the spinal cord. And this is, you know, if I touch something, like if I touch the whiteboard, all that sensation is gonna go up into my spinal cord, into my central nervous system, and give me a representation of what's out there. And then over here you have the efferent nerves, which is gonna be me getting that information that's in the spinal cord, going into the muscles, and actually acting on it. So, in order to achieve full potential of a system, you must use the afferent system to take in stimuli and then use the efferent system to properly address the stimuli. If you don't reach a high enough level of stimulus, you will likely remain mostly in the afferent mode and think without reacting to your environment. So what I mean by that is when you have a stimulus and it's a intense stimulus, you're gonna be reacting to the environment. Whenever you're reacting to something, you're gonna be in the sympathetic nervous system. So that's gonna be when the heart rate's elevated, when you're more psyched up about things, when you're breathing a little bit heavier, say you're carrying a heavy sandbag or something, you're gonna be more in this efferent system if you're doing it right. Introspection, thinking about how you feel, thinking about what it feels like to touch things, thinking about how things taste, that's gonna be in the afferent system. And you need both. What I have down here is basically an example. If we do a sandbag carry, a lot of people, I'll have people do sandbag carries if they have low back pain. If you do a sandbag carry and you're having low back pain, what that means is you're in the afferent system because your body, your low back, is talking to your brain and it's telling your brain, I need to quit what I'm doing because this is dangerous or I'm gonna hurt myself. So what you need to do is you need to actually increase the intensity instead of decrease the intensity, and you need to increase it to the point where you get into the efferent system. If you're in the efferent system, it's gonna be the brain talking to the muscles, and you're actually gonna get the glutes to fire, the VMOs to fire, the hamstrings to fire. So that's the difference in mindset of if you're having pain, instead of shying away from what's causing you pain, you need to find a way to bring more intensity into the exercise and do the exercise without pain. And that is unlocking the efferent system of the body, which is going to be very important if you're to progress in training. Okay guys, so the next thing I want to talk about is the selfish brain theory. This is really interesting because your brain actually uses a lot of energy, more energy than any other organ, and it will prioritize itself over any other function in the body. So the brain regulates energy and metabolism, and it allocates that energy to itself before it gives energy to any other organ or any other system. So your brain is only 2% of your body weight, but if you're in a stressed out state, you'll use up to 50% of the carbs that you consume over a 24-hour period only for your brain. okay? The reason that this is important is because this goes into something called the glucostatic theory, which is that the hypothalamus controls absorption of nutrients, okay? So remember that. And then the lipostatic theory, which is the hypothalamus can adapt the absorption of nutrients so fat deposits remain constant. The reason that this is important and the reason that it applies to training at the gym is because you have two different energy sources. You have energy on demand, which is going to be, I need energy right now. I haven't had any food, but I'm having a stressful thing that's happening to me and I need to deal with it in my brain, so I'm going to use whatever fuel I have in my body to fuel my brain. If energy supply depends on food versus allocation, increase in body weight is certain, okay? Disorders to energy on request will influence allocation of energy, which alters body mass, which basically means if you are stressed and you have anxiety and you're thinking about things and then you eat in order to calm that stress, you're going to take in a bunch of food, but not all that food is going to be used by the brain, because what you should be doing is turning things into glucose by acting on things. But instead of acting, you're eating food, which is feeding the anxiety, which creates a feedback loop, because once you eat the food, you feed the anxiety, you haven't dealt with the thing that's making you anxious, and then you're going to be more anxious, which is going to cause you to eat more. So, obesity is created because you are feeding anxiety, not feeding your body. Feeding anxiety with food is suppressing the problem. The problem will try to show itself again, which creates a feedback loop. The more glucose you ingest, the more anxious you become. To suppress anxiety, you eat more glucose. Therefore, obesity is an anxiety disorder that leads to depression. The selfish brain theory leads me to the next topic, which is sympathetic fixes. Sympathetic fixes is all about different ways to deal with anxiety. So, anxiety is not wrong or bad. Anxiety is a body driver towards action. And action happens in the sympathetic nervous system or in the fight state. If you don't act on anxiety and express it, your anxiety will grow and be ignored, which is repression. To calm the anxiety of a system, you can use these fixes. Porn, alcohol, weed, nicotine, angry thoughts, drugs, reliving bad memories, TV, YouTube, social media, caffeine. So all those things are used to calm anxiety, but they don't get to the root cause. If you can't get to the root cause, you won't be able to change yourself. And if you can't change yourself, you can't change the world around you. If you can't change your world, you will turn to fixes, which is another feedback loop. So, if you take away the fixes, you will quickly realize what is making you unhappy. Your work, marriage, health, mental state, or anything you want which you are not chasing. So if you have to have 5 cups of coffee to have energy for work, you can either continue being a slave to the machine or quit coffee, quit your shitty job, and find what gives your life purpose. Using stimulants is not a fix, but needing the stimulants in order to go do something is a fix. So if you like caffeine because you like to feel jacked up on coffee and you enjoy the feeling of coffee, that's all good, and you enjoy your work. But if you can't do work unless you have coffee, that means that you don't enjoy your work and you're using that for energy. And what I would suggest is stop drinking coffee, realize what kind of work you want to do, and go for the work that you want to do. And I wrote, you are your own judge, because it's going to be up to you when the fixes come in, what you want to do, any of this stuff, which is not my choice, it's yours. But if you're using it so that you don't go towards the life that you want to, I would say that you're using it incorrectly. Next thing that we're talking about is bilateral systems. I didn't go too in depth on this, but a lot of people look at bilateral systems as inversely correlated. So if I have one side working, the other side's not working as well. Usually when I see a bilateral system, basically every single bilateral system that I see them working together in an arch concept. So from engineering, we know arches are one of the strongest structures. In order to have a good arch, it must be balanced on both sides. It doesn't have to be perfectly balanced, but the more balanced it is, the higher the arch can go. So right here, I have some different examples. The first example, which we constantly use in the gym, is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Usually what people think is you can either be in the parasympathetic side of the nervous system or you can be in the sympathetic side of the nervous system. But if you can't explain things with the most natural human event, which is sex, then it doesn't work. And if you're gonna have sex and you're gonna have an intense orgasm, you have to be in both, because parasympathetic leads to blood flow to the extremities. If you can't get blood flow to the extremities, you can't get a boner. If you can't get a boner, you can't have sex. But in order to have an orgasm, you can't be totally chill and you can't be just on the parasympathetic side. You actually have to have an intense expression. So as blood flow builds, the intensity and the sensation builds on the sympathetic side, and then up here at the top of the arch, you have the sexual expression. And that is how we look at things in the gym. It's all sex, people. Okay, next we have, and I got this from a book called Principles by Ray Dalio, which is a really good book. He was talking about enjoying life and making an impact, and he wrote it out like this. And he had enjoying life going this way, making an impact going this way, and he said you need to do both and you need to balance. But what I believe is if you don't make an impact, you're not going to enjoy life. And if you're not enjoying life, you're not going to have an impact. And I think that both of these things work together. The more joy that I can bring into other people's lives, the more joy I can bring into my own life. And of course, if I never have vacation, time with my family, time with my friends, and relaxation, I'm not going to be able to work as hard personally anyways. Another one that I have, and this is from Schrodinger, What is Life, who's a great scientist, and I would really check out that book as well, is Creating Order and Fighting Disorder. And a lot of people would use it, the blah, 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 blah. All right, we'll start that one again. Okay, all right, so we have Creating Order and Fighting Disorder, which come from a book called What is Life by Schrodinger. There was already the concept of entropy from thermodynamics before that, but this is not the same thing, because creating order can be taking time for yourself, meditation, going, relaxing in the woods, clearing your head, being able to think about things. Fighting disorder is action, doing things in the gym, pushing yourselves physically, pushing yourself mentally, not just thinking and relaxing about things. And I believe that you have to do both in order to create order and fight disorder. This one's another good one. This is homeostasis versus hormesis. Of course, the system always wants to be balanced. It's always looking for homeostasis. And you have to have a certain level of homeostasis if you are to have hormesis, which is a favorable response to stress. If the system's not balanced, it's not going to be able to improve, which is why you need that homeostasis in order to push forward, move towards the hormesis, and improve the whole system. So if one side becomes too strong, the whole arch will collapse on itself. They don't need to be perfectly even, but they need to be balanced enough. Okay, and that'll move into this next concept. So now we're going to talk about critical mass. This kind of goes along with the arch idea, but the idea behind critical mass is all parts of a complex system must work together and move upwards together in order for that complex system to grow. If you optimize one parameter of a complex system, all the other parameters will fail. And my example that I used on this was the whole COVID thing. Everybody wanted to minimize COVID deaths, COVID cases at all costs. In order to do that, we created, failures at every other parameter. We have more starvation in the world that we've had. We have more suicides. We have more depression. We have more anxiety, drug overdoses, global economic crash, bunch of fucked shit, freedoms being taken away. And it's all to optimize one thing in a complex system. And every time you do that, every other parameter is going to fail. Another example that I have is an example with athletes, and I just wrote, a runner must have a certain amount of strength, a power lifter must have a certain amount of conditioning. So although a runner doesn't need to be that strong to run a marathon, you're gonna want a little bit of strength, and the more strength that you have, to a point, you're gonna be better and you're gonna be healthier when you run. A power lifter doesn't need to be super conditioned, but if you're gonna be going through training sessions and putting in a lot of work in an hour and you don't wanna train for 4.5 hours in order to get 6 lifts done, it's gonna be important to do that too. Underneath it, I have the movement box, and this comes from Strong Fit. The movement box is all about homeostasis and hormesis balanced together, and the way that you look at it is this is like an elevator shaft, and this is an elevator here. And the actual box is homeostasis. So in order to have the box balanced, you need to have a balance of planes of movement. So you need rotation, you need movement up and down, you need movement right to left. Energy systems, which means you're gonna have to have, and we've kind of moved away from just anaerobic and aerobic capacity, but you're gonna have to be able to push really fucking hard. You're gonna have to be able to nasal breathe. You're gonna be able to flow, able to fight, that kind of stuff. Down here we have the types of movements, so you need a load, a carry, and a hold, which I'm not going to go too deep into for this video, but maybe another one. And then we have types of contraction, which are concentric, eccentric, and isometric. So if all those are balanced, I can create homeostasis within the system. And if I can create that homeostasis, then I can add hormesis. Hormesis is a favorable response to stress. So think about this like hot air in the elevator that's allowing the elevator to rise. If I have too much hormesis and it gets outside of the parameters of this box is not going to be able to fit up the elevator shaft and it's going to crash on itself. If I have a circle that's too small, but I balance all this shit, I'm not actually going to be able to improve from my training like I want to.